Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. Do you ever have one of those days when things just don't go right for you? Well, today is the day. I've come into my studio today thinking that I was going to make this spirally pencil case, and of course I've gone and started the video and everything's completely mucked up. So I've managed to salvage the project. Today instead we're going to be making a scrappy pouch for pens, pencils, brushes. It's certainly not what I intended to record today. The purpose for this video was to use up some scrap fabric, and I didn't want to waste what I had, so this is what I'm coming up with instead. This is just going to be using up some old binding strips from quilts that I've made previously. So these are probably 2.5 to 3 inches in width, and some of them are probably only about 1.5 inches. So we just need lots of little scrappy bits of fabric, and then I have got a strip of Peltex. Now this is a non-fusible Peltex. It's got a really nice amount of stiffness to it, so it's like flexible cardboard. You could use Decaville, and you could certainly also use the fusible Peltex as well. And if you don't have access to any of that, you can just use a fusible fleece. All I'm going to do is take all of these strips of fabric to the machine with this piece of Peltex, and I'm going to attach everything on the diagonal, just like I did with my cute little bags a couple of weeks ago. So we'll sew them all across the diagonal to fill up this piece, and then we've got a nice multicoloured strip of fabric to work with. Okay, I have my little piece of Peltex here, loads of strips of fabric, and I'm just going to pick random pieces as I go. So I'm going to place mine on the diagonal. It doesn't matter if you want to have them straight or diagonally or going horizontally. It's really up to yourself. Place one piece of fabric diagonally over your Peltex, then grab yourself another piece and place that directly over the top, lining it up on the edge here. Now I'm only using the left edge of my foot at the moment because I can have my Peltex running along to the left rather than all getting stuck underneath my throat space. Now you want to make sure you've got enough of an overhang on the edge of the fabric here so that when this folds open, it's still going to extend beyond the edge of your stabilizer. So once you're happy with the placement, you can start stitching the two together onto your stabilizer. Now I'm just using the edge of my presser foot along the edge of my fabric. There's no particular seam allowance. I'm just securing the layers together. Once you've stitched those two layers, open it out and press it. So I've got the iron set up right behind me, and I'll just get up every time I sew a row and just iron that in place. Then I'll come along and top stitch. First thing I'm going to do here where the corner is just secure the bottom corner of the fabric in place, just so that it doesn't flap about and get in my way. So I'll go and iron that, and then I'll top stitch straight away. So the last time I did one of these projects, I just went and attached all of the pieces of fabric first, then I came back and top stitched. But I figure I'm getting up and down all the time, I might as well top stitch at the same time that I'm putting the next layer on. So that top stitching just gives it a nice quilted look to the top. And remember, when you put the next layer on, to make sure that this edge here has enough of an overhang to sit beyond the stabilizer. So now I'm just going to continue all the way to the end and keep on sewing, flipping, folding and top stitching my pieces. When this side starts to get a little bit top heavy or too far over to my throat space, I can then turn around and start working from the opposite side. So you don't have to work from the same side all the time. But you do still need to make sure that you have enough to fold over when you finish sewing. Okay, we have all the fabric secured to the stabilizer. I'm going to trim everything right back to the outside edge. And you'll notice that I've accidentally stitched one of the front flaps onto the back. I didn't have that out of the way when I was sewing. Not to worry, it's not going to be in my way at all. Okay, now I have a workable piece of fabric. What am I going to do with it? Well, this is where I've discovered I've failed. I hadn't planned my original project out properly at all, so now I'm left with a long skinny strip of Peltex with some scrappy bits of fabric, and it's not really all that useful. I'm not going to be able to do the project I've planned to. We'll save that for another day. I'm not going to let it beat me. What am I going to do with this? Okay, I think I'm just going to turn this into a skinny pencil case because I don't want to waste it, and the colours are really cute. So I think that's all I'm going to do. Let me know in comments if you can think of something that I could have done with this strip, and we might end up doing another video and might get it right this time. I'm going to cut this piece in half, and I think we're just going to make a nice little long skinny brush pouch or pencil pouch. Keep it simple. So I'll cut this in half, and then I'll cut 2 pieces of fabric for the lining. I'll let you know the measurements in a minute. I had originally wanted to make sure I left enough seam allowance on the outside edge of the stabilizer so that I could line this piece without having the stiff edge of the stabilizer folding over. Okay, what I have here are 2 pieces that are 10 by 30 centimetres or 4 by 12 inches. So I've got the stabilised scrappy bits of fabric and 2 pieces of lining of the same size. We also need a zip, and I'm just going to be using a regular dress zip. This is 30 centimetres or 12 inches. We're going to put tabs on the end of the zip so it doesn't have to be quite as long, and then a couple of scrap pieces of fabric. Okay, to determine how long a zip we actually need, what we'll do is make some marks on the back of our fabric here. We need to allow seam allowance. I'm going to have a 1 centimetre seam allowance all the way around for my project, which is 3/8 of an inch. So this is my seam allowance on the side here. Then the end of my zip needs to have a little tab on it, just to make it nice and neat. But we don't want to have too big a tab, otherwise you won't have enough of an opening in here and you won't see everything in the corner. So we're going to have a tab of 1 centimetre. It's just going to be a really tiny one. So this will be our zipper tape area. We'll have our tab in here, and this will be our seam allowance. And the zip, when it's finished, needs to sit inside this area here. So you measure the distance from here to here, and on mine that's 26 centimetres, which is about 10 1/4 inches. And then we're going to mark our zip to that length. From this marked line here, I'll measure out 26 centimetres or 10 1/4 inches. And that's the area just there. Now, of course, we need to cut our zip a little bit longer than that, but we don't want to cut it longer than the area where our seam allowance is. This end here, I'm just going to tape it together so that the teeth sit together. Then I'm going to cut this about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimetre longer than that marked line. So there's my marked line here, and the edge of my zipper tape is within this area here. Grab some of your scrap fabric, place that right side together, and we'll sew that 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimetre. And we'll do the same on the other side. So I have the tape marked here. I'll cut that a little bit longer. Grab another scrap bit of fabric, fold that in half with right sides together, and stitch that as well. So I'm quickly going to go and close up the ends of that zip now. The tabs are on the end of the zip, and where you've got that little bit of adhesive tape, you can just peel that off. Open out your fabric, and you just finger press that at each end, and then you have some nice neat tabs on the end of your zip, and that will then be the length of your fabric or a little bit longer. So when you do cut these bits of fabric, just keep enough of an allowance so that it can extend beyond the fabric, or at least be the same size as the finished piece. Take the zip, place that face down over the top of your quilted fabric, clip it in place, grab one of your lining pieces and place that directly over the top. Let's go to the machine and we'll sew that all the way across, and then we can top stitch. I'll start with the stabilised fabric at the top and the lining fabric underneath. When you get to your zip slider, raise your foot and move the slider out of the way. Now that that's been attached, we can separate the lining and the main fabric, press it open, and then bring the lining to the back. And with the lining underneath the main fabric, we can top stitch. Now when we top stitch, we're not going to start at the outside edge. We're going to start where the end of the zip is, or the beginning of the tab, and that'll make it easier for us when we're sewing the side seams of the bag up. Back stitch here, and because I've got a thick stabilizer underneath, I have to keep folding my lining under because the stabilizer wants to go back behind the zip. And at the other end we will stop where the zip and the tab meet. Now it's time to put the other side of the bag onto the zip. And when we place these together, you can see where I've cut this in half here. I don't want this end and this end meeting like this. And the reason for that is that it lines up really well here, but as soon as you sew it together, it's going to have a step. Look at that with the seam allowance on it. You'll see how the green sort of steps down and the yellow has that kink in it as well. So to avoid that from happening, we're going to have the fabric lined up like this. And then there's no worry about having to match up fabrics or seam lines. I'll place these two pieces together. Then we'll get the other lining piece and place that over the top as well, and line up the side edges and the top edge. And then we can take this back to the machine and do it all again. And just be mindful of where your zip is. You'll want to move that out of the way. Then open out that lining again. Make sure that lining's sitting underneath your main fabric, and we'll top stitch again where the zip and the tab meet. Okay, that's looking nice and neat. I have trimmed up the side edges just to make that all nice and straight. Take your outer fabric, place those right sides together, and we'll do the same for the lining. Sew up the side seams and the bottom. I'll secure everything in place first. And on the side edge where you've got the zipper tape here, pop your tab over to the lining side, line up those edges. Open your zip. You want to make sure at this point you've got your zip open most of the way. Move your tab to the lining side and line up those edges. And then we'll line up the lining. I've left a fairly big opening just in here because I've got a stiff stabilizer. It'll be a little bit more difficult to manipulate when you turn everything the right way around. So leave a decent size opening, backstitch here, come all the way around and finish up the side and bottom seams. As usual, I will reinforce my stitching on the side. I'm also going to be reinforcing my stitching along this edge here as well, because I do want to do some kind of boxing. I'm not sure what yet though, so I will reinforce these side edges here. Let's go and sew this all the way around. Okay, I'm starting at the lining and I'll backstitch here. And we'll leave a huge opening at the bottom there. Okay, I am liking this project less and less as I go, but I'm going to persevere. I'm sure it's going to come out fine. So I think on this project, the corners are way too sharp and we need to have little box corners. So what we're going to do is measure 1.5 centimetres from the outside edge, and that is 5/8 of an inch. And we'll do that on all 4 corners. And you might want to mark both sides so that you can see what we're going to do here. So get your hand in there and open the stabilizer out. And this line across here is our stitching line. So we've got the square that'll come out into a point. And that's our stitching line for all the corners of our pouch. And then we can trim off that little bit of excess. So go over that a couple of times because it's really close to the end where the seam is, but we want just a really tiny boxed corner. We'll do that on all the corners. If you feel that that is just a little bit too small, go up just another fraction. All the corners are ready to go now and be stitched in place. And I can tell you I will be glad when this project is finished. Okay, we'll just sew over those marked lines that we've made. And because they're so close to the end, I have double stitched that. Okay, now we can just trim off those little ears here. So we'll just cut that off close to the stitching line. I'm still leaving about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimetre seam allowance. And we'll turn it the right way around. And just make sure you open your zip all the way here. Poke all your corners out along the bottom and just make sure your tabs are sitting out nice and straight along the top edge there. You just want to really get in and poke that out. And if you're happy, reasonably happy with how it looks, then you can get back into the lining and close it up. If you find you have linings that are a little bit too loose on the inside here, rather than using your regular seam allowance, you can actually use a little bit extra and perhaps have a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance instead. It's a nice quick way of just reducing some of that bulk in there. All you need to do to close it up is fold those edges over and stitch close to the edge. I'll quickly go and do that now. There we have it. A project that I've probably not really enjoyed doing. I've ended up making so many mistakes and forgetting bits and pieces that it's just become a chore, but it's turned out pretty nice, I think. I can live with it. You got to have those days, don't you? Being a shallow pouch and nice and long, it's actually going to be quite handy because there's plenty of room in here. Having the narrow zipper tabs at the top edge here means that you will actually be able to get in and see everything that's in your bag. It's not so bad. I'm being too hard on myself. I know. But, you know, yeah, I had a plan and it didn't work out. But this has come up all right. Look, I can't really consider this project a fail, even though it's not what I had planned to do. I think it's turned out okay. The colours are fabulous, and I think that alone will make the project acceptable. It's a pretty useful little pouch, actually. It's just that I've done so many pouches, I didn't really want to do another one. Lots of room in there, nice and long, and you'll fit lots of little goodies inside there. So I hope you've enjoyed following along with me while I had to reassess what I was going to do. The spiral pencil case tutorial that I want to do will come. I should really just make a trial version first so that I know what I'm doing. Most of the time I wing it. This time around you've got a long skinny pouch. Hopefully sometime soon, when I've nutted out how to do the project that I want to do, I'll be able to bring you that spirally pouch video. If you saw the video I did the other day where you met Mum, we had a great time doing a video together and working on a little project. She had lots of fun. You guys seemed to really enjoy it, so that was fantastic. Thanks so much for your positive comments. I'm sure that next time she comes up, she'll be happy to join us again. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.